Anyway, really exciting stuff, but I would recommend writing out examples like 4-measure or 8-measure examples. Write down stuff on paper. Start with 2 chords like we did, any 2 chords, and see if there's more than one possibility. Like that one, I didn't even notice there was more than one possibility at first. And then when you find out that, like, okay, we've got a C major chord and we've got an A minor chord, like what possible keys could I be in, you know? C could be the 1, the A minor could be the 6. Yeah, exactly. It could be the 2 and the 4. Any other possibilities? Yeah. I don't think so. So, unless I'm mistaken, I think there's only 2. So then what you do is you go, that's my progression. All right, I'm going to write a progression that, like, you know, just with those chords. I mean, there's only 2 chords, so you kind of got it there, depending on which one you start with and everything. You go, what other chords do those have in common? Like, you could write out the chord. It's like, in the key of C, we got C major, D minor, E minor. You could write them all out in one line. And then underneath it go, well, in the key of G, what are my chords? You could write them all out and circle all the ones they have in common, and you could write a progression with just those. How do I make it feel like it's in one key versus another when they're all actually chords that are related to one another? There's nothing explicit, you know, and then it'll have to do with cadences, even like natural cadences. Like, I mean, I think that's a technical term that I don't mean it in a technical way. Like the ones where like you're going from a 4 or 5, you know, if they share those things in common or whatever, like we talked about earlier. Point is, like, you can go, I'm going to start in this key and end in that same key, and I'm going to use these chords to make it feel like it's in that key. And then you write another progression. It's like, I'm going to use the same chords, but I'm going to do it from the other key's perspective. So I'm going to start with that chord and end with that chord, and I need the chord that comes before that last chord maybe to be a chord that will give it a sense of cadence to make sure everybody knows we're in the same. And it'll always be kind of vague, because there's nothing explicitly telling you which key you're in. The closest you get is the fact that you're beginning and ending and having some semblance of a kind of like a cadence, depending on what chords in common you have to work with. You know, that'll tell you how good a cadence you can come up with. And then what you can do is say, well, which ones don't they have in common? Well, this one has these chords in common, and this one has those chords in common. And then you can use those chords to explicitly tell you what key you're in, and to explicitly tell you when a change has occurred. You know, if you can take the time to go through that, write it. I mean, definitely write down. You don't want to just keep this abstract. You want to kind of like, even if you put it on the paper, you may not necessarily remember it all right away. So it's kind of thing where you want to like exercise that way of thinking. Write it down on paper and then send it, you know, scan it or whatever and send it, and I'll take a look at it. Cool. We'll talk about it next week if you want. Yeah, just doing exactly what we talked about. Writing down progressions. And yeah, you know, everything you said. Take 2 chords, find out what they have in common. Write down chord progressions that sound like they're in one of the keys using those chords, and then make it sound like it's in the other key using the exact same chords. And then find out what chords they don't have in common and use those to make it explicit which key. You could just fit them in on a 4th beat or a 3rd beat, it doesn't matter, or a whole measure of it. Once you put that chord in there, it's going to tell you you're in that key for sure. There's no way around it. And then if you have a chord progression that lasts 16 measures instead of 8, you could change key in the second half, the last 8 measures, by switching those incompatible chords. You know, like we talked about, first 8 measures, you could have an A minor in that progression somewhere, and you know you're in the key of G. The second half, it could have an A major in it, and using that as a cadence to really show that the second half is in the key of D, even though it's the same song. Cool. All right, man. Well, that's quite a lot to talk about. Probably, I mean, a couple weeks worth of content to think about. Oh.